guys, welcome to another episode of Smash JT, and despite what you may think with the tone of this video, I'm not hating on GameStop, I'm just delivering the news. And the fact that I want to say that up front is because there's probably going to be a negative connotation to where I take this, but it doesn't mean that I hate GameStop, it just means I don't really feel like there's a place for their business in the world that we find ourselves today. GameStop is back to the drawing board when it comes to figuring out its business. Initially, they were going downhill and they had a lot of debts to pay, so they decided, okay, we're gonna sell our mobile phone Sprint division off. Then we're gonna try to find a suitor to buy our actual company because we can't pay off these debts. GameStop initially confirmed that they were going under a strategic review process in early June where they were bringing in external sources to help identify the needs in the company and find the best suitors to purchase them. Well, a few months have passed and they haven't found anybody. In fact, nobody wanted to buy GameStop at the current value that it's at because they have so many debts that they have to pay back that no other business in their right mind would want to take that on and try to fix it. So as of right now, GameStop has announced that they're not up for sale anymore. They're going to try to figure out their issues and fix them from the inside out. They still don't have an active CEO, so their first order of business is to hire somebody to run the company. And that person is going to be tasked with the job of fixing the entire industry that is falling apart around them. The entire video game industry is moving towards a far more digital platform, which is completely destroying what GameStop was founded upon in the first place. Initially, they were selling physical new games, then they moved on to selling used games, and the used games became such a great business for them that they made that their mainstay. The problem with that is a lot of the game companies these days are moving towards digital, and even the physical games are coming with partial downloads or complete game downloads in the physical boxes themselves. So the reselling used market is nothing like what it used to be, and the future looks even more bleak for them. A few years back, GameStop saw this happening and they bought ThinkGeek. They went into that with the idea that ThinkGeek would sell physical game related merchandise where they could fill the stores with that and still stay afloat, and for a while it worked. But that's only done so much and hasn't been enough to sustain their business model for the future either. The reason they're not going to sell is because of the lack of available financing on terms that would be commercially acceptable to a prospective acquirer. And as of the announcement, the investors did not take too well to this information. In fact, the stock itself is down more than 25%, around $4 just today. A stock that was worth nearly $15 and change is now worth just 11 bucks in one day. And this is just on the news of them not selling. And like I said, the future for GameStop looks even more bleak. There aren't many options for them to go. There aren't any acquirers that want to take on a failing business model with a ton of debts. And in all honesty, from my personal perspective, GameStop is kind of looking like the modern era Radio Shack, where, yeah, Radio Shacks are still around, but they're a shell of what they used to be. They never changed with the times, and they faltered because of it. GameStop had its chances to be successful, but they relied way too heavily on used games, and they expected that market never to die off. But here we are looking at the used game market in 2019 saying, it's just not what it used to be, and because of that, GameStop is in a tremendous amount of trouble. Though to be honest, I don't necessarily feel bad for the investors because I've been saying this for the past 3 years. GameStop's business model is failing. It's not something that's sustainable for the long term, and anybody who was investing in this was crazy if they thought they could turn it around with how they were going about business in the first place. I do want to highlight the fact that just because the stock is plummeting today doesn't mean that GameStop is instantly going to go out of business. In fact, because they had such a gigantic amount of money come in when they sold their mobile division, they're probably going to use some of that money to boost the value of the stock by giving dividends, by giving money back to the shareholders. So there might be some sort of dead cat bounce on this for it to go back up, but I wouldn't personally expect this to shoot up from there for any reason whatsoever. The reality of the situation is GameStop is in a lot of trouble. They've been in a lot of trouble for a very long time, and nothing is changing on the horizon for that situation to remedy itself. Whoever they end up bringing in as a CEO, I truly feel bad for, because it's almost like it's setting them up for failure. I don't know what somebody could do to turn that business model around in the current environment we find ourselves as video gamers. They've already gone through cutting back on costs, closing any of the stores that weren't bringing in much money, and cutting back anything they could find that may have been taking income away from the stores in general. So everything as far as cost cutting has already been done, and they're still struggling. And it's sad, because physical gaming is something that a lot of gamers enjoy. It's part of their passion, it's part of their hobby, it's part of what makes them a collector. But there are so many other options available because the industry has expanded so much, so quickly, that GameStop kind of saw it pass them by. Companies like Limited Run Games and Strictly Limited are providing physical copies to digital games that people really want. There's eBay, there's online stores, there's Amazon. There's a ton of different ways in the modern era to go about getting video games without even having to step outside your front door, and they come on release day. Hopefully. But for those of us that want them on release day and want to go to have that feeling of getting it at the store, there are the big box stores that are already around as well. So there's not really much of a reason to go to GameStop. They've tried the cards, they've tried the memberships, they've tried having frequent buyer programs, they've tried everything. It just hasn't worked for them. So unfortunately, ultimately, I don't really see this ending well for them. Not to mention that last year they had a brand new cycle of consoles for the most part. They had the PS4 Pro, the Xbox One X, and the Nintendo Switch was still fairly new. Now, being in the current state of affairs, there aren't really any new systems currently, and there's nothing coming out in the near future on the horizon. And a lot of GameStop sales were based off the fact of the hardware sales from those consoles. And since those have kind of been dying down, that's hurting GameStop a lot as well. And if that wasn't enough, analysts have started to downgrade the stock from outperform to neutral, setting a price point of $12 and saying they expected this to outperform because it was going to be sold off and they would have made money back on that and hopefully fixed a lot of the debts that they owed. Now that it's not being sold, nothing is getting resolved, and the company itself is in far more turmoil than it ever has been in the past. Is it something that can be saved? Yes, every company, every business can be saved from miracles. Things can change in the retail market that would favor them, but it would take some extreme circumstances, and it's not something that I'd be willing to bet on. Like I've said in many videos before, GameStop is going out of business, it's going bankrupt, and there's nothing they can do to stop it because the direction the industry is going. And honestly, it's kind of sad, because GameStop was a convenient place to be able to go in and grab a game and have it day one and talk to someone about gaming who hopefully knew what they were talking about. Not always, but oftentimes employees there would know what they were talking about. And it was a good environment for gamers in the modern era. Arcades are no longer what they used to be. Game stores are no longer really around. So GameStop was kind of the last saving grace for the small-time game store. Now all we're going to be left with is Target, Walmart, Best Buy. Those major retail outlets that will sell physical items that also sell other things are going to be the major players in town. Hopefully, looking at this from a different perspective, maybe if GameStop goes out of business, that would open up opportunities for mom and pop stores to come back into the fray, to be able to service their local markets and retro and modern video games. Maybe. We're looking a little bit down the road with that, but it's by no means a guarantee. It's just something to think about. Just because GameStop may be going out of business doesn't mean there will be nothing that shows up to replace it in the future. But as far as the reality of GameStop's longevity, it doesn't look very good. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. Does this news shock you? Are you surprised that GameStop is really struggling now? I mean, they've been struggling for a while now, but today really marks the day of the beginning of the end of GameStop. And I know we've said that a lot of times before, but the stock really hasn't reached a low like this for a very long time, and it doesn't look like it's going to be recovering. Or are you kind of happy about this? Are you glad to see GameStop go because you've been treated like crap by them? You've purchased items and been lied to, and you think they're a horrible company, you think they're getting what they deserve? Be very interested to hear what you guys have to say about GameStop and how you feel about the company on the whole. I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.
Smash